The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I didn't move to refresh it. Across the dining room table at Mom's house, my stepbrother Marcus was holding court like he always did, gesturing wildly with his phone in one hand. The Hendersons are offering $4.2 million, he announced to the assembled family. Cash offer, 30-day close. My half-sister Emma squealed. Marcus, that's incredible. You can have the wedding you've always dreamed of. I took a small sip of the cold coffee. Nobody looked at me. Marcus had called this emergency family meeting 3 days ago. Everyone showed up. Mom's stepmother Linda, her husband Richard, Marcus's father, Emma, Richard's sister Patricia, and Marcus's fiancée Jennifer. The only person who seemed uncertain about their presence was me. The house itself felt different without Mom in it. She'd lived here for 8 years with Richard, and I'd visited regularly for Sunday dinners. Now it felt like Richard's house, filled with his family, making decisions about property that had never been theirs. We've already selected a realtor, Patricia added, pulling out her iPad to show glossy photos of the beach house. Diane Morrison. She's top tier in Orange County, specializes in luxury coastal properties. Jennifer leaned forward eagerly, and Marcus spoke to a wedding planner, who works with the Harbor Club. They have an opening in May. It's absolutely perfect timing. May, I said. That's less than 3 months away. Exactly. Marcus grinned. Fast close, immediate access to funds, dream wedding by spring. Everything's aligning. Richard nodded slowly, though I caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Your mother always said the house was meant to bring joy to the family. She did say that, I agreed carefully. Among other things, the beach house has been sitting empty for 2 years, Richard said, though that wasn't entirely accurate. I'd been there just last month, checking on the maintenance crew's work. Your mother would have wanted it to benefit the family. My mother, not his wife of 12 years. My mother, who died 14 months ago, after 18 months of fighting pancreatic cancer. I've already spoken with a real estate attorney, Marcus continued, pulling up documents on his phone. Since Dad married Mom, and the property was technically in family use during their marriage, we have a strong case for communal ownership. California's community property laws are pretty clear. I set my coffee cup down with deliberate care. That's not how property law works. Everyone turned to stare at me. It was the first thing I'd said since arriving 30 minutes ago. Marcus's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. What was that, Alex? Community property laws don't retroactively apply to assets acquired before marriage, I said, keeping my voice level. Mom bought that house in 2008, 5 years before she married Richard. It was purchased with funds from Dad's life insurance policy, and her own savings, both separate property under California law. Richard's jaw tightened. Your mother always considered it a family asset. She welcomed all of us there for holidays, birthdays. Welcoming people to a house and transferring ownership are 2 different things, I interrupted quietly. Patricia set down her iPad with more force than necessary. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Richard. Alex has always been difficult about family matters. Your mother left you that beach house in her will. Actually, she didn't, I said. The room went silent. Excuse me, Patricia's voice was sharp. Mom didn't leave the house to anyone in her will, because it wasn't part of her probate estate. Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Alex, we've been through Mom's will with our attorney. The house is listed as an asset she owned, yes, but not as an asset to be distributed through probate. I pulled out my phone and opened a saved document. The property was transferred into a revocable living trust in 2008. The trust was amended in 2013 when Mom married Richard, specifically to clarify that the real property remained separate. You're making this up, Emma said uncertainly. The trust documents are filed with Orange County, public record. Anyone can request copies. Richard shifted in his seat. Even if there was a trust, I'm the surviving spouse. California law is clear about spousal rights to community property, I finished. Not to separate property held in trust. The trust agreement names a specific trustee and specific beneficiaries for the real property. You're neither. Marcus's face had started to flush. Our attorney said, that's not how property law works, I said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at me. It was the first thing I'd said since arriving. Marcus's smile didn't waver. What was that, Alex? Community property laws don't retroactively apply to assets acquired before marriage. Mom bought that house in 2008. She married Richard in 2013. Richard's face reddened slightly. Your mother always considered it a family asset. She hosted Richard's entire family there for Thanksgiving every year. Hospitality doesn't equal ownership transfer, I replied, meeting his eyes. She had very specific plans for it, I continued. Very specific legal arrangements. Plans change, Patricia interjected, her voice tight. And frankly, Alex, you've barely visited the place in years. Marcus and Jennifer have been maintaining it, checking on it, making sure the pipes don't freeze in winter. The house is in Laguna Beach, I said. It doesn't freeze, and I pay for the landscaping service that maintains the property year-round. I also pay the property taxes, the insurance and the utilities. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Mom's bank accounts were transferred to Dad after she passed. Whatever withdrawals you think you're making are coming from my personal checking account, I finished. I can show you 18 months of bank statements if you'd like. Every automatic payment, every service fee, every utility bill, all documented. An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Jennifer, who'd been mostly quiet, watching the exchange with growing unease, leaned forward. Look, Alex, we're not trying to cut you out completely. We understand you have sentimental attachment to the place. Marcus and I just think for our wedding, it would be perfect to use the sale money for the venue we really want, the Harbor Club in Newport. We'd absolutely invite you, obviously, you could bring a guest. The generosity of being invited to a wedding funded by the unauthorized sale of my mother's property was not lost on me. How generous, I said evenly. Marcus's careful expression cracked. You don't belong in this family anyway, he said, his voice hardening. You never did. You show up to these things with your attitude, acting like you're better than everyone, like we're beneath you somehow. You contribute nothing, Marcus. Richard started, but his son cut him off. No, Dad, it's true. Alex hasn't been part of this family in any real way since you married Mom. 12 years, and what? Birthday cards, obligatory holiday appearances, when Mom guilted her into coming. Meanwhile, we've been here. We've been the ones actually building something together. I set down my coffee cup carefully. The closing date is when? Marcus blinked at the abrupt subject change. What? You said 30-day close. When's the closing scheduled? You said 30-day close. When's the closing? March 15th. Why? Just curious, I said. Congratulations on your sale. I stood to leave. Wait, Richard said. That's it? You're not going to fight this? Would it matter? I asked, genuinely curious. The question seemed to catch him off guard. We're your family, Alex. We should be able to discuss these things. You're not discussing, I pointed out. You're announcing. There's a difference. I left before anyone could respond. The next 2 weeks moved with the strange momentum that comes from watching a train head toward a collapsed bridge. Marcus posted on social media constantly, photos of the beach house with captions like saying goodbye to make room for new beginnings, sunset shots with Jennifer where they talked about sacrifices that lead to blessings. His posts got hundreds of likes, comments flooded in, so proud of you. This is what family means. Your mom is smiling down. That last one made my stomach turn every time I saw it. Jennifer's Instagram became a wedding planning showcase. She documented everything, the dress shopping trips with her mother and bridesmaids, the cake tastings, the florist consultations. She posted a photo of the Harbor Club contract signature with the caption, "Dreams don't work unless you do." So grateful for a partner who makes the impossible possible. The venue deposit receipt appeared in another post, $65,000, paid in full non-refundable, secured our dream location, she'd written. May 15th can't come soon enough. I watched her hire a coordinator, someone named Destiny, who charged $8,000 just for day of services. The photographer was another $12,000. The florist's quote, which Jennifer gleefully shared, was $18,000 for ceremony and reception arrangements. Going big on the flowers because life is short and weddings are forever. She'd registered at 3 different stores. The gift total was already approaching $40,000 in requested items. The honeymoon 2 weeks in Bora Bora had been booked and partially paid for. Another $30,000. Emma texted me once during this period. Mom would want us to be happy. You know that, right? She'd want Marcus to have this. I stared at the message for a long time, before deciding not to respond. What could I say? That Mom had literally created legal structures to prevent exactly this scenario. That she'd sat me down 6 months before she died, and made me promise to protect the house. Don't let them guilt you, Mom had said. her voice already weakened by the cancer spreading through her pancreas. Richard is a good man, but he can't say no to Marcus. And Marcus has never understood that wanting something doesn't mean you're entitled to it. What if they hate me? I'd asked. Then they hate you, she'd said simply. But at least they'll hate you while you're protecting something I built. Something that came from your father's love and my work. That matters more than being liked, Alex. The beach house itself sat unchanged through all of this. I drove by it once, not stopping, just slowing down as I passed. The for sale sign was up. Diane Morrison's face smiling from the placard. Her phone number in bold letters. Under contract had been added in bright red. Someone had been inside recently. I could see fresh vacuum lines through the front window, and the plants on the deck had been watered. Jennifer probably, staging it for her mental picture of the house that made our dreams come true. When she married Richard, she'd made it clear the property was separate. I remember the conversation, the lawyer's office, the documents she'd shown me. This is yours, Alex, she'd said. Not because I don't love them, because I do love you. Richard had seemed fine with it then, but that was before Mom got sick. Before the cancer diagnosis, the rapid decline, the funeral where he'd sobbed at the podium about our life together. I'd watched Marcus that day, standing beside Jennifer, his face appropriately somber. He'd delivered a eulogy about the mother, who welcomed me when she married Dad, and the love she brought to our blended family. It had been a nice speech. Some of it was even true. On March 10th, 5 days before closing, I received an email from Marcus's real estate attorney. Dear Alex, it began. In the interest of transparency and family harmony, I'm providing you notice that the property located at 2847 Coast Highway, Laguna Beach, is scheduled to close on March 15th at 2 p.m. While your stepfather Richard has legal authority as surviving spouse, we wanted to extend the courtesy of informing you. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact my office. I forwarded the email to my own attorney, a woman named Victoria Chang, who'd handled Mom's estate planning. She called me within an hour. This is interesting, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Did you tell them? No. Are you planning to? I thought I'd let the process play out. Alex, this could get messy. They've clearly spent money based on expectations. I know. She paused. You're sure about this approach? What did Mom always say? The best teaching moments come from natural consequences. Victoria laughed. She was talking about medical students, not family drama. The principle applies. All right, I'll be there on the 15th. This should be educational. Marcus posted about the closing day. Big day tomorrow. Turning the page on the past, writing the future with my beautiful bride-to-be. Sometimes you have to let go to move forward. #new beginnings #family. First, the comments were supportive. So happy for you guys. This is what family is about. Your mom would be so proud. That last one caught in my throat a little. Jennifer's post was more direct. A photo of the Harbor Club's grand ballroom. 48 days until I marry my best friend in this room. Dreams really do come true when you're with the right person. Thank you to everyone who made this possible. The vendors were booked. The invitations had been mailed. 250 of them, embossed and expensive. The photographer, the florist, the jazz quartet, the ice sculpture artist. Jennifer's dress had been altered twice to perfection. Marcus had rented a vintage Rolls-Royce for the exit. The total wedding budget, based on the Instagram posts and vendor tags I'd seen, was easily north of $300,000, all dependent on the beach house closing. March 15th arrived with the kind of perfect Southern California weather that real estate agents dream about. Sunny, 72 degrees, a light ocean breeze. The closing was scheduled at Pacific Coast Title Company in Newport Beach. I arrived at 1:45 p.m., dressed in a simple suit, carrying a leather portfolio. The receptionist recognized me from previous visits. Miss Morgan, good to see you. Conference room B. Thank you, Sandra. I could hear Marcus's voice before I reached the conference room, loud, confident, celebrating. When I entered, the conversation stopped. The room held 9 people. Marcus, Richard, Jennifer, Patricia, the buyers, a couple in their 60s, named the Hendersons, their agent, Marcus's agent, and the escrow officer. Alex, Richard said, surprised. What are you doing here? I was invited, I said, setting my portfolio on the table. The courtesy email from your attorney. Marcus exchanged a glance with his agent. This is a family matter. We're handling it. I understand. I took a seat at the far end of the table. Mrs. Henderson leaned toward her husband and whispered something. He nodded. Marcus's agent, a polished woman in her 50s named Diane, cleared her throat. Well, shall we begin? We're just waiting for the notary. As if on cue, the door opened and a young man in his 30s entered, carrying a notary stamp and a thick folder of documents. Sorry I'm late. Traffic on the 405 was brutal. I'm James Kirkland, your notary for today's signing. Everyone settled into their seats. The escrow officer, a meticulous man named Peter Chen, began distributing document packets. All right, Peter said. We're here for the transfer of property at 2847 Coast Highway, Laguna Beach. The sellers are represented by Richard Morgan, acting as the surviving spouse of the deceased owner, Dr. Sarah Morgan. The buyers are Gerald and Patricia Henderson. Before we begin signatures, I need to verify all parties' identities and authority to execute these documents. He started with the Hendersons, checking their driver's licenses against the purchase agreement. Jennifer squeezed Marcus's hand excitedly. She'd worn a new dress for the occasion. I'd seen it on her Instagram that morning, tagged #closing day. Richard Morgan, Peter continued, holding out his hand. Richard provided his license. Peter compared it to the documentation, then frowned slightly. Mr. Morgan, I'm showing here that the property was held in a revocable living trust. Do you have the trust documents with you? It was my wife's trust, Richard said. When she passed, her assets transferred to me as surviving spouse. That's not quite how trusts work, Peter said carefully. Do you have documentation showing you as the successor trustee? Marcus leaned forward. Our attorney confirmed this. The property was used by the family. California is a community property state. The property was acquired before your father's marriage to Dr. Morgan, Peter interrupted, checking his notes. In 2008, correct? Yes, but then it wouldn't be community property regardless. Peter flipped through his documents. I'm going to need to see the actual trust documents and verification of trustee authority before we can proceed. The room went very quiet. Richard shifted uncomfortably. I don't have those with me. Did your attorney not provide them? Peter asked. He said they weren't necessary, Marcus interjected. This is a straightforward transfer. With all due respect, Peter said, no transfer involving a trust is straightforward without proper documentation. Who's the named trustee of Dr. Morgan's revocable living trust? Richard opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Marcus. Marcus's confidence had developed a hairline crack. My understanding was that Dad, as surviving spouse, I'm the trustee, I said quietly. Every head in the room turned toward me. I'm sorry, Peter said. I opened my portfolio and removed a document. I'm the named trustee of the Sarah Morgan Revocable Living Trust, established April 2008, amended June 2013. I have the certified copies here, along with the death certificate and my identification. I slid the documents across the table to Peter. The silence in the room was profound. James the notary leaned forward to examine the papers alongside Peter. After a moment, Peter nodded. These appear to be in order. The trust names Alexandra Morgan as both trustee and primary beneficiary. That's impossible, Richard said, his voice barely above whisper. It's public record, I replied. Filed with Orange County when the trust was established, and when it was amended after Mom married you. The amendment specifically reaffirmed me as sole trustee and beneficiary of the real property assets. Marcus's face had gone white. You never said anything. You never asked, our attorney said. Richard started. Your attorney apparently didn't do a title search, Peter interrupted. Which should have been the first step. Miss Morgan, do you have additional documentation of your authority? I provided my trustee certification, my identification, and the property deed showing the trust as owner. Peter examined everything carefully, then turned to Richard and Marcus. Gentlemen, I'm afraid this closing cannot proceed. The person attempting to sell the property has no legal authority to do so. Only Miss Morgan, as trustee, has that authority. This is insane, Marcus exploded. Alex, you can't just what? I asked calmly. Protect my mother's property. The property she explicitly left to me in a legal document. Jennifer's face had crumpled. But the wedding, we've already spent the earnest money, I finished. Yes, I saw your Instagram posts, the Harbor Club deposit, the photographer, the dress alterations. Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. I'm confused. If you have no authority to sell, where did our earnest money go? That's an excellent question, I said, looking at Marcus. Marcus's agent Diane had pulled out her phone and was frantically typing. We received the earnest money in good faith. The sellers represented themselves as having authority. Represented, Peter emphasized, but did not actually have. This is why we do title searches. Miss Morgan, did you authorize this sale in any capacity? I did not. Did you sign any documents relating to this sale? I did not. Were you even aware a sale was being attempted until recently? I was informed at a family meeting on February 20th that Marcus intended to sell. I was not consulted. I was not asked for permission. I was in fact told I didn't belong in the family when I questioned the legality. I said this last part looking directly at Marcus, whose face had now progressed from white to a splotchy red. James the notary was making notes. For the record, without the actual trustee's signature and consent, any sale documents would be void. Additionally, if funds were transferred based on fraudulent representation of authority, he trailed off meaningfully. Mr. Henderson stood abruptly. Patricia, we're leaving. Diane, I want our earnest money returned immediately. The money has been disbursed to the sellers, Diane said weakly.
Then undispersed it, Mr. Henderson snapped. This is fraud. We put down $200,000 in good faith. $200,000, more than I'd estimated. Jennifer made a small sound of distress. Our attorney will be in contact, Mrs. Henderson said coldly, gathering her purse, and I'll be filing a complaint with the California Bureau of Real Estate. The Hendersons and their agent left. The room felt much larger with just 7 of us remaining. Richard found his voice first. Alex, your mother would never have wanted this kind of division in the family. No, I agreed. She wouldn't have. That's why she was very clear about her wishes. She showed me the trust documents. She explained them. She made me promise to protect them. You could have told us, Marcus said, his voice strained. I did tell you. At the family meeting, you told me I was wrong about property law. You told me I didn't belong in the family. You proceeded with a sale you had no authority to make. We didn't know. You didn't ask. I corrected. You assumed you wanted something, and you took it, and you didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, there was a legal reason you couldn't. Peter was gathering his documents. I'll need to file a notice of failed closing. Morgan, as the actual property owner, you'll need to sign some documentation confirming the sale was unauthorized. Of course. James the notary packed up his stamp. I'm required to report suspected fraud to the California Secretary of State. This clearly meets that threshold. Marcus lurched to his feet. Alex, please. The wedding is in 48 days. We've already paid everything. The venue. The vendors. Jennifer's family flew in from Boston for the engagement party based on this. We told everyone. You told everyone. You were selling property you didn't own. I said, that's not my problem, Marcus. That's yours. You heartless. He caught himself, breathing hard. Jennifer was crying now, quiet tears running down her carefully made-up face. Patricia had her arm around her. Richard stood slowly. What do you want, Alex? Money? We can work something out. A percentage of the sale when we do it properly. I don't want to sell the house, I said simply. Then what do you want? I looked at each of them. Richard, who'd presented himself as the grieving widower while planning to sell his dead wife's property without her daughter's knowledge. Marcus, who'd built his entire wedding fantasy on stolen foundations. Patricia, who'd supported every step because it benefited her nephew. Jennifer, who'd perhaps known, perhaps not, that her dream wedding was funded by fraud. I want you to understand something, I said quietly. My mother spent 20 years saving for that house. She bought it with money she earned. Money she saved. Money that came from Dad's life insurance after he died. She married your father, Richard, and she loved him. But she protected that house because it was her piece of independence. Her reminder that she was more than just someone's wife. I gathered my portfolio. When she got sick, she made me promise to keep it. Not to sell it, not to give it away, but to keep it. Because she knew, that without those protections, people would try to take it. And she was right. So what happens now? Marcus asked dully. Now, I stood. Now you figure out how to return $200,000 in earnest money to the Hendersons. You figure out how to tell your wedding guests that the venue is canceled. You figure out how to explain to Jennifer's family that the wedding they flew across the country for isn't happening. At least, not the way you planned. We could sue you, Patricia said suddenly. For the money we've already spent, damages. I smiled without humor. You could try, but you'd have to prove you had a reasonable expectation of receiving property you never had any legal claim to, and then I'd countersue for attempted fraud, emotional distress, and violation of fiduciary duty. My mother's estate attorney is very good. Ask Richard. He met her at the funeral. Richard's face went gray. Victoria Chang. I confirmed. She handled all of Mom's estate planning. She's the one who drafted the trust amendments when Mom married you. Richard. She's the one who made sure everything was protected. And she's the one who's been documenting every social media post, every text message, every email about this sale for the past 3 weeks. I walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Marcus, I hope you and Jennifer have a beautiful wedding, just not one funded by selling my mother's house without permission. I left them sitting in the conference room, Peter still organizing his documents, James making his official notes, my step-family slowly realizing the magnitude of what they'd done. The first call came before I'd even reached my car. Richard, asking if we could talk like reasonable adults. I let it go to voicemail. The second call was from Emma, crying, saying I'd destroyed the family. I let that one go to voicemail too. By the time I got home, my phone had 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and a Facebook message from Jennifer's mother asking if there was any way to salvage this situation for these young people in love. I turned off my phone. The next morning, Marcus's Instagram had been deleted. Jennifer's had gone private. The wedding hashtag they'd been promoting #Marcus and Jennifer Forever had been abandoned. Victoria called on my landline. Peter Chen filed the failed closing report. She said, the Hendersons' attorney contacted me about recovery of earnest money. Apparently Marcus and Jennifer spent almost all of it. The venue deposit was $65,000, but they also paid the caterer, florist, photographer and band in full, advance payment discounts. How much is left? About $30,000. The Hendersons want full recovery plus damages. They're prepared to sue Marcus, Richard and the listing agent. What about criminal charges? The DA's office is reviewing. It depends on whether they can prove intentional fraud versus negligent misrepresentation. Marcus's attorney claiming they confirmed the authority to sell actually works against them. It shows they knew to check, but failed to do so properly. I sat down heavily. Victoria, did I do the right thing? She was quiet for a moment. Do you remember what your mother said when she set up the trust? Which part? She told me. I'm not doing this to be controlling. I'm doing this because I know who I married, and I know his weaknesses. Richard is a good man, but he's easily influenced by Marcus, and Marcus has never understood the value of things he didn't earn himself. She said that.
Verbatim. It's in my notes from the trust amendment meeting. She knew Alex. She knew exactly this scenario could happen. That's why she made you trustee. Not to hurt them, but to protect what she'd built. After we hung up, I drove to the beach house. It was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, maintained, waiting. I walked through the rooms Mom had designed, stood on the deck overlooking the ocean she'd loved. My phone, which I'd turned back on, buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jennifer. I just want you to know you've destroyed the happiest day of my life. I hope you're satisfied. I deleted it without responding. Another text came through, this time from Emma. Mom would be ashamed of you. That one I answered. Mom set up the trust specifically to prevent this situation. She made her wishes clear. I'm honoring them. Emma's response was immediate. You're hiding behind a dead woman's wishes to justify being cruel. I typed and deleted 3 responses before finally settling on if respecting Mom's explicit legal documents is cruel, then yes, I'm cruel. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Mom used to photograph obsessively. She'd called them California's apology for everything else. A final text came through, this time from Richard. We need to talk about moving forward as a family. I looked at the message for a long time before responding. The family moves forward by respecting Mom's wishes. That starts with accepting that this house was never yours to sell. His response came quickly. It was never about the house. It was about taking care of Marcus. Mom took care of me by protecting her property. I wrote back. Maybe it's time for you to teach Marcus about consequences instead of rescuing him from them. He didn't reply. 3 days later, Victoria called with an update. The Hendersons settled with Marcus and Richard for full return of earnest money plus $20,000 in damages. Richard had to take a loan against his retirement account. The listing agent's insurance is covering part of it. And the wedding, postponed indefinitely. The Harbor Club kept their deposit. No refunds within 60 days. Most of the other vendors did the same. Jennifer's dress alterations were non-refundable. They're out about $140,000 total. I closed my eyes. That's brutal. That's fraud consequences. Victoria said matter-of-factly. The DA declined to file criminal charges, but the real estate board is investigating the agent. Marcus's attorney is also under review for providing incorrect legal advice. What about us? Any blowback? None. You were the legal owner protecting your property. You didn't misrepresent anything, didn't hide anything that you were obligated to disclose. They never asked you for permission, never consulted you as trustee. Legally and ethically, you're completely clear. After the call, I sat on the beach house deck and tried to feel vindicated. Instead, I felt tired. My phone rang. Against my better judgment, I answered. Alex. It was Marcus, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Can we talk? I'm listening. I'm not calling to argue, or ask for money, or try to change anything. He paused. I'm calling to say I'm sorry. I waited. I convinced myself that because Mom married Dad, everything became family property. I wanted it to be true so badly that I didn't check, didn't ask, didn't think. Another pause. Dad tried to tell me we should consult you, and I shut him down. I told him you were just going to be difficult, that we should just move forward. Marcus, let me finish. Please. He took a shaky breath. I spent the last 3 days realizing that I planned an entire wedding on money I didn't have, from a sale I had no right to make, for a house I never owned. And when everything fell apart, my first instinct was to blame you for not warning me, not to blame myself for not asking permission. I leaned back against the deck railing. What are you going to do now? Jennifer and I are getting married at the courthouse next month. Small reception at her parents' house. We'll save up for a real celebration later. He laughed without humor. Turns out you can't build a dream on someone else's foundation. Mom used to say something similar. I said quietly. About surgical technique. You can't borrow someone else's hands and expect them to know what your brain wants. She was right about a lot of things. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Alex. I know I don't have any right to ask this, but the house. What are you going to do with it? Keep it. Use it. Honor what Mom wanted. Could we? He trailed off. Never mind. Ask. Could Jennifer and I maybe visit sometimes? Not to claim it or anything like that. Just to, I don't know. Remember her. I thought about my mother, about her ability to love fiercely while setting clear boundaries, about how she'd protected her property while still welcoming Richard's family into her life. Once a year, I said, you can pick the weekend, but you ask first, and you respect that it's my space. Deal. I could hear the relief in his voice. Thank you, Marcus. One more thing. Yeah, get your own attorney next time. One who actually does title searches. He laughed. A real laugh. No kidding. After we hung up, I walked inside and found the box of Mom's photos. The ones she'd taken from this deck. Dozens of sunsets, each one slightly different, each one perfectly preserved. On the back of one, in her precise doctor's handwriting, some things are worth protecting, not because we don't want to share them, but because losing them would mean losing ourselves. I taped the photo to the refrigerator, where I'd see it every time I visited. My phone buzzed one last time. Emma. Richard told me what happened at the closing. I'm sorry I called you cruel. You were just doing what Mom asked. I typed back. Family is complicated, but Mom's wishes weren't. Thanks for understanding. Outside, the sun finished setting over the Pacific. Inside, Mom's house stood exactly as she'd planned it, protected, preserved, and mine to keep. The beach house would stay in the family, just not the family Marcus had assumed. The Sullivan County auction house smelled like old wood and ambition. I arrived 30 minutes early, watching luxury SUVs and Mercedes sedans fill the gravel parking lot, men in sport coats and women in business. Casual streamed toward the entrance, clutching glossy property brochures my Uncle Warren had printed without my permission. The brochure cover showed my grandfather's lakefront cabin at Golden Hour, 2 acres of pristine shoreline, the hand-built dock extending into crystal water, the boathouse my father and Warren had constructed together 40 years ago. Estate liquidation sale. The header screamed in red letters. Motivated seller. I wasn't motivated. I wasn't even the seller. But Warren had spent 3 months convincing everyone I was both. Alex needs to face reality. I'd overheard him tell my Aunt Linda at Dad's funeral in February. Keeping that cabin on a social worker's salary. The property taxes alone are 18 grand a year. Insurance, maintenance, utilities. He's looking at 30,000 annually. He makes what, 45? He'll lose it to the county in 2 years anyway. Better to sell now while the market's strong. He'd said it loudly enough for half the funeral reception to hear. My cousins had nodded sympathetically. My mother's sister had squeezed my shoulder with pity in her eyes. Even my younger brother Marcus had pulled me aside. Maybe Uncle Warren's right, man. You can't afford that place. What none of them knew, what I'd carefully avoided mentioning during the grief and chaos of Dad's death, was that I'd spent the last 8 years as a forensic accountant for the state attorney general's office before transitioning to nonprofit work. My social worker salary was supplemented by consultation fees, expert witness payments and investments I'd made during my 6-figure years. I lived modestly by choice, not necessity. I'd also spent those 8 years learning exactly how people tried to steal property through fraudulent estate claims. Now I sat in the back row of folding chairs, my leather portfolio containing documents Warren didn't know existed, and watched my uncle play auctioneer's assistant. Warren stood near the podium, shaking hands with bidders, playing the role of concerned family member saving his incompetent nephew from financial ruin. At 62, he still had the car salesman energy that had made him successful. Firm handshake, easy smile, expensive watch flashing as he gestured toward the property photos displayed on easels. My nephew meant well inheriting this place, Warren told a silver-haired couple examining the brochure, but he's in over his head, works with at-risk youth now, noble, but not exactly lucrative. I'm just trying to help family before this becomes a foreclosure situation. The couple nodded knowingly. I recognized them from the Lake District Association, the Hendersons who'd tried to buy our shoreline access rights for years. They'd bid on every property within a mile of ours. Mrs. Henderson touched Warren's arm sympathetically. It's so hard when family members can't face reality. Our son-in-law went through something similar, refused to sell his mother's house even though he was drowning in debt. Exactly, Warren said, warming to his narrative. Alex is a good kid, heart in the right place, but he's 34 years old, never owned property before, doesn't understand what's involved. The well pump alone cost me $4,000 to replace last year, out of my own pocket, because Alex couldn't afford it. That was a lie. I'd paid for the well pump replacement myself, writing Warren a check that had cleared his account. But correcting him now would reveal my presence. A younger man in a tailored suit approached, Marcus Tang, the developer. Mr. Mitchell, I've reviewed the survey documents. The water rights include commercial use provisions. Absolutely, Warren said. My father secured those when he bought the land in 1978. The property can support a small marina or rental operation. I've had 3 developers express interest in that aspect alone. Another lie. The water rights were residential only, explicitly restricted against commercial development in the original deed. But Tang was nodding, making notes on his tablet. I watched Warren work the room, spreading misinformation with the practiced ease of someone who'd been bending truth for profit his entire career. He told one bidder the septic system was brand new. It was 12 years old. He told another the property taxes would likely decrease with new ownership. Impossible. They'd been rising 3% annually for a decade. He described the boathouse as recently renovated, when the last major work had been done in 2003. Each lie was calculated, designed to inflate the property's value and attract higher bids. Each lie would increase Warren's finder's fee. The investment group representative, David Song, was questioning Warren about the estate timeline. So probate hasn't completed yet. Oh, it's just a formality at this point, Warren said smoothly. The will's been filed, the courts rubber stamping it. I'm handling the estate as the senior family member. My brother would have wanted this property to go to someone who'd appreciate it, not to gather dust, while my nephew figures out he can't afford it. And your nephew consented to the sale. Warren's smile never faltered. Alex understands it's for the best. He's here today actually. Wanted to see the property go to a good home. Song looked skeptical but didn't press further. I counted 47 people in the audience. Developers, wealthy retirees, investment groups, a few local families hoping for a miracle bargain. All of them had paid $500 non-refundable registration fees to bid. All of them believed they were buying legitimate estate liquidation property. All of them were wrong. The auctioneer, a professionally jovial man named Dennis Kowalski, stepped to the podium at exactly 2 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's Sullivan County Estate Auction. We have one property on offer. Lot 47, 4,287 Lakeshore Drive, comprising 2.1 acres of prime lakefront, a 3,200 square foot main residence, built in 1982, detached boathouse, private dock, and all associated water rights. Warren stood beside the property photos, beaming like he'd built the place himself, instead of just helping with one summer's worth of boathouse construction. Before we begin, Kowalski continued, I want to thank Warren Mitchell for facilitating this sale as the estate representative. Warren, anything you'd like to add? Warren stepped forward. Just that this property meant everything to my brother David before he passed. Our father built this cabin with his own hands, but David would want it to go to someone who can truly care for it, not someone struggling to make ends meet. He looked directly at me in the back row. My nephew Alex is here today. I hope he understands this is best for everyone. Sympathetic murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several bidders glanced back at me with pity. I met Warren's eyes and smiled slightly, his brow furrowed. He'd expected anger, or tears, or absence, not calm. Kowalski cleared his throat. Right, well, let's begin bidding. The opening bid is set at $400,000. Do I hear 400? 3 paddles shot up immediately. 400,000, now 425. Do I hear 425? The Hendersons raised their paddle. 425, now 450. For the next 12 minutes, I watched the price climb. The bidding was aggressive. Waterfront property this close to the city rarely came available. Warren stood beside the property photos, his expression growing more pleased with each escalation. At $500,000, a woman in the front row dropped out, shaking her head. At $550,000, 2 more bidders lowered their paddles. Warren leaned over to Kowalski, during a brief pause, whispering something that made the auctioneer nod. I caught fragments. Told you it would go high. Premium location. The bidding continued. $575,000, $600,000, $600,000, $625,000. By the time it hit $650,000, only 4 bidders remained. The Hendersons, a developer named Marcus Tang, who'd converted 3 properties on the North Shore, an investment group represented by David Song, with his Bluetooth earpiece, and a retired couple I didn't recognize. The man wearing a Navy veteran cap, the woman with kind eyes that reminded me of my grandmother. Warren was practically glowing. At $650,000, he'd have earned a substantial finder's fee from whatever arrangement he'd made with Kowalski's auction house. He'd also positioned himself as the family hero who'd saved me from financial ruin. I could already hear the story he'd tell at Thanksgiving. Poor Alex didn't understand property values. I had to step in before he lost everything. $675,000, Tang called out. $700, the investment group countered. The Hendersons exchanged glances, then raised their paddle. $725,000. Tang shook his head, lowering his paddle. The investment group hesitated, then lowered theirs. $725,000 going once. Kowalski announced, this is prime lakefront. Folks won't see another property like this for years. The retired couple, the man wore a Navy veteran cap, the woman had kind eyes, raised their paddle. $750,000. The Hendersons countered immediately. $780,000. The veteran couple whispered to each other. The woman nodded. $800,000. The Hendersons started to raise their paddle, then stopped. Mr. Henderson shook his head. They lowered it. Kowalski scanned the room. I have $800,000 from bidder 43. This is a phenomenal property, ladies and gentlemen. $800,000 going once. I opened my portfolio and pulled out the documents I'd been carrying since the funeral. My phone buzzed. A text from Margaret Reeves, my father's estate attorney. I'm outside. Ready when you are, I texted back. Now, Kowalski raised his gavel. 800,000 going twice. The auction house door opened. Margaret Reeves entered, carrying a briefcase and wearing a navy suit that made her look exactly like what she was, an attorney who'd spent 30 years ensuring dead people's wishes were respected. She walked straight down the center aisle. Warren's smile faltered. Margaret, what are you? Stop this auction immediately, Margaret said, her voice cutting through the room like a bailiff's announcement. Kowalski froze, gavel raised. Excuse me, Margaret reached the front, set her briefcase on the table beside the podium, and extracted a thick folder. I'm Margaret Reeves, estate attorney for the late David Mitchell. This auction is unauthorized and illegal. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Bidders exchanged glances. The Hendersons looked alarmed. Tang was already typing on his phone. Warren stepped forward, hands raised in placating gesture. Margaret, I don't know what you think you're doing, but the estate hasn't even gone through probate yet. Actually, it has. Margaret opened the folder, pulling out documents with the Sullivan County Court seal. Each page was flagged with colored tabs, organized with the precision of someone who'd spent 3 decades making sure dead people's wishes couldn't be ignored. Probate was completed 3 weeks ago. I filed the paperwork on April 1st, attended the hearing on April 10th, and received the court's approval of the will's terms on April 12th. She laid the documents on the table, spreading them so the court seals were visible to everyone in the front rows. That's impossible, Warren said, but his voice had lost its confidence. His face had gone pale. I would have been notified. You were notified, Margaret said calmly. She pulled out a green certified mail receipt. Certified mail was sent to your residence at 447 Maple Grove Road on April 3rd. The return receipt is in this file, signed by you on April 5th at 2:47 p.m. She held up the receipt. Warren's signature was clearly visible, along with the date stamp. Warren's hand moved to his collar, loosening his tie. I thought that was just informational. It was informational. It informed you that probate had been initiated, that you were not named as executor, and that you had 0 legal authority over estate assets. Margaret's voice remained professionally calm, but there was steel underneath. It also informed you that any attempt to sell, encumber or transfer estate property would constitute fraud. She turned to address the entire room, her voice carrying to the back rows. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the confusion and wasted time, but this property is not for sale. It was never for sale. Mr. Warren Mitchell has no legal standing to auction this property, nor any ownership interest in it whatsoever. Kowalski set down his gavel. I'm going to need to see documentation. Of course. Margaret produced a bound document. This is the last will and testament of David Mitchell, filed and approved by Sullivan County Probate Court. Page 7, Section 3, Paragraph A. She read aloud, I hereby bequeath my entire interest in the property, located at 4287 Lakeshore Drive, including the main residence, boathouse, dock, and all associated structures and water rights, to my son Alexander David Mitchell, to be his sole and separate property, with explicit restriction preventing any claim or encumbrance by other family members. The silence in the room was absolute. Margaret continued, Page 8, Section 4. I name Alexander David Mitchell as executor of this estate, granting him full authority to manage, maintain or dispose of estate assets as he sees fit. Under no circumstances is my brother Warren Mitchell to be involved in estate administration. Warren made a strangled sound. Margaret wasn't finished. Page 9 includes a personal letter from the deceased, which I'll summarize. David Mitchell specifically foresaw that his brother might attempt to interfere with this inheritance. He structured the will to prevent exactly this situation. She looked at Warren. Your brother knew you, Warren. He knew you'd try this. I stood from the back row. Every head in the room turned toward me. The property deed was transferred to my name on April 12th, I said, walking down the aisle. 3 weeks ago, I've been the legal owner for 21 days. I reached the front and placed my portfolio beside Margaret's briefcase. I have the recorded deed, the probate court order, the property tax statements in my name, and updated insurance documents. Everything is legally mine. Warren stared at me. You knew. This whole time you knew. I knew Dad left me the cabin. Yes, I've known since the will reading. I pulled out a document from my portfolio. What I didn't know was that you'd forged documents claiming to be the estate executor and arrange an unauthorized auction. I handed the document to Kowalski. It was an affidavit with Warren's signature, claiming he had legal authority as executor to sell estate property. That's your signature, isn't it, Uncle Warren? Warren's jaw worked. I was trying to help. You forged legal documents, Margaret said flatly. You claimed authority you didn't possess. You accepted registration fees from these bidders under false pretenses. You arranged to sell property worth $800,000 that you have absolutely no right to sell. A man in the third row stood up, the one with the Bluetooth earpiece. I'm David Song, real estate attorney with Foster and Associates. Mr. Mitchell, did you or did you not sign documents claiming executor status for this estate? Warren looked cornered. I may have indicated certain authority. That's a yes or no question. Yes, but I genuinely believed. Belief doesn't establish legal authority, Song said coldly. I represent the investment group that bid $700,000. We've wasted significant time and resources based on fraudulent representation. We'll be pursuing legal action. The Hendersons stood simultaneously. Mrs. Henderson's pitying expression had been replaced with fury. We've been trying to purchase property in this area for 8 years. We spent 3 weeks arranging financing, paid an attorney to review the sale documents, and took time off work to attend this auction, all based on lies. Kowalski had gone pale. Mr. Mitchell, did you or did you not represent yourself to Sullivan County Auctions as having legal authority to sell this property? Warren opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, but I was acting in good faith. Good faith requires actual authority, Kowalski snapped. He turned to his assistant. Cancel the auction. Return all registration fees immediately. Back to Warren. Our contract stipulates that sellers misrepresenting their legal authority are liable for all auction costs, administrative fees, and potential damages. Our legal team will be in contact. Warren swayed slightly. Margaret pulled out another document. I should also mention that I've been in contact with the Sullivan County District Attorney's Office. Forging documents to sell property you don't own constitutes real estate fraud under state law. It's a felony. I didn't forge anything. Warren's voice cracked. I signed papers saying I had authority. You signed legal affidavits claiming executor status when you knew you weren't the executor. I said quietly. You accepted money, the registration fees under false pretenses. You attempted to sell $800,000 worth of property that doesn't belong to you. The auction house door opened again. A woman in a county clerk's uniform entered, accompanied by a uniformed deputy. Margaret had called reinforcements. The clerk approached Margaret. You requested verification of property records. Yes, can you confirm the current legal owner of 4287 Lakeshore Drive? The clerk consulted her tablet. Alexander David Mitchell. Deed recorded April 12. Transferred from the estate of David Mitchell via probate court order. No liens, no encumbrances, single owner, clear title. She looked at Warren. Sir, did you attempt to auction this property today? Warren said nothing. The deputy stepped forward. Mr. Warren Mitchell, we have some questions about fraudulent property sale allegations. We'd like you to come to the station. Am I being arrested? Warren's voice was barely a whisper. Not at this time, but the DA's office will be reviewing the case. Attempting to sell property through fraudulent representation is a serious offense. Warren looked at me, his expression a mixture of betrayal and desperation. Alex, you could have stopped this before it got this far. You could have told me about the will. I could have, I agreed, but then you would have tried something else. Claimed the will was invalid, or that Dad was incompetent when he wrote it, or that I manipulated him. You would have dragged this out for years. I gestured to the room full of witnesses. This way, there's no ambiguity. 50 people just watched you attempt to sell property you don't own. You can't claim misunderstanding. You can't claim I'm lying. You can't rewrite this. Margaret added, the district attorney is particularly interested in the fact that you accepted $23,500 in registration fees from these bidders. That's theft by deception, Mr. Mitchell. Combined with the document fraud, you're looking at substantial penalties. The veteran with the Navy cap stood up. Young man, he addressed me. I'm sorry you had to deal with this. We bid in good faith. The property is beautiful, and your grandfather clearly built something special. His wife nodded. If you ever do decide to sell, We hope you'll remember us, but we understand why you fought for this. They left, followed by a stream of other bidders, some angry, some sympathetic, all of them done with Warren's circus. Within 10 minutes, only a handful of people remained. Margaret, the county clerk and deputy, Kowalski and his assistant Warren, and me. Kowalski pulled Warren aside, his earlier jovial demeanor completely gone. Our contract stipulates severe penalties for fraudulent sale representation. Let me be very clear about what you're facing. He pulled out a tablet, scrolling through a document. Section 12, paragraph C. Seller agrees to indemnify Sullivan County Auctions for all losses, damages and legal fees resulting from misrepresentation of ownership or authority. That's a $15,000 base penalty. Then we have administrative costs, marketing, staff time, facility rental, insurance for today's event, another $8,000. We'll also be refunding all registration fees. That's $23,500 you collected under false pretenses. Warren's face had gone gray. But I gave most of that money to your company as deposit, which we'll be returning to the bidders, and you'll be reimbursing us, Kowalski said flatly. We also spent $4,200 on advertising across 3 real estate platforms. You're liable for that as well. Total immediate damages, approximately $50,800. Our attorneys will send formal notification within 3 business days, and we expect payment within 30 days or we file suit.
I don't have $50,000, Warren said, his voice barely audible. Then I suggest you liquidate assets or arrange financing, because we will pursue collections aggressively. We've been in business for 42 years with an impeccable reputation. What you did today threatened that reputation. Kowalski snapped his tablet cover closed. You'll also be blacklisted from every major auction house in the Tri-County region. Consider your selling privileges permanently revoked. He turned to me. Mr. Mitchell, Alexander Mitchell, I apologize profusely. We conduct thorough verification normally, but your uncle provided what appeared to be legitimate documentation. Court letterhead, notarized signatures, forged documentation. I corrected. Yes, we've already implemented new verification protocols because of this. If you're ever interested in a legitimate sale, we'd be honored to represent you with a 20% discount on our commission as an apology. He left with his assistant. The county clerk handed me a folder. These are certified copies of the current property records, just in case you need them. And Mr. Mitchell, she smiled, your grandfather's property is a landmark. I'm glad it's staying in good hands. After she and the deputy left, taking Warren's statement for the DA's file, only Margaret, Warren and I remained in the auction house. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes and the abandoned property brochures scattered across empty chairs. Warren looked up at me from where he sat, slumped in the folding chair. His expensive watch caught the light, a Rolex he'd bought last year, bragging about it at Christmas dinner. Now it looked like costume jewelry on the wrist of a broken man. Why did you let it go this far? His voice was hoarse. Why humiliate me in front of all these people? You could have stopped this weeks ago. One phone call, one conversation, one conversation. I pulled a chair around and sat facing him, like the conversation at Dad's funeral, when you loudly announced I couldn't afford the cabin, or the conversation at the will reading when you accused Margaret of manipulating Dad, or the 3 voicemails you left telling me I was being selfish keeping property the family should share. Warren flinched. You had 50 conversations with me, Uncle Warren, 50 chances to respect Dad's wishes, to trust that I knew what I was doing, to treat me like an adult who could make his own decisions. I leaned forward. Instead, you forged documents and tried to steal $800,000 from me. I was trying to help you. No, my voice was harder than I intended, the words I'd been holding back for months finally breaking free. You were trying to help yourself, to the finder's fee, to the control, to the satisfaction of being right about me being too broke to handle this. I pulled out the last document from my portfolio, the letter Dad had included with the will. The paper was soft from repeated handling, the folds worn. I'd read it 100 times since the probate hearing, sometimes finding comfort, sometimes finding strength. He wrote you a letter too, you know. Margaret has it. Did you ever read it? Warren's face crumpled like paper. I know. I threw it away. I was angry about the will, angry that David left me nothing after everything He stopped. After everything you what? I prompted. After you helped build the boathouse that one summer. After you borrowed money from Dad 3 times, and never paid it back.
after you tried to convince him to reverse mortgage his house to invest in your consulting business. Warren looked away. Margaret opened her briefcase and extracted an envelope, still sealed. This is a copy. Your brother wanted you to have it, regardless of whether you chose to read it. He knew you might not, but he wanted you to have the choice. She placed it on the chair beside Warren, and gathered her materials with deliberate care, giving Warren time to pick up the envelope. He didn't. Alex, I'll be in touch about the DA's decision within a week. The evidence is substantial, but since you're the victim, your cooperation will influence the outcome. She looked at Warren. Warren, I strongly suggest you hire a criminal defense attorney immediately. Real estate fraud carries a potential 3-year prison sentence. The forgery charges add another 2 years. Given your age and lack of criminal history, you'll likely avoid prison time if you cooperate fully and make restitution, but you need proper representation. She snapped her briefcase closed. I've represented David's interests for 30 years. This is the last service I'll perform for his estate. I wish it had ended differently. She left, her footsteps echoing in the empty auction house. I stood there, looking at my uncle, this man who'd taught me to fish, who'd helped build the boathouse, who'd called me sport and slipped me $20 bills at Christmas. This man who'd just tried to steal $800,000 from me, because he believed I was too poor and stupid to stop him. The letter explains everything, I said quietly. Dad knew you'd do this. He saw you try to control Mom's finances after she died. He watched you pressure Aunt Linda into selling her house and moving into your rental property. He knew you measured people's worth by their bank accounts. Warren picked up the envelope with shaking hands. That's why he left you nothing, I continued. Not because he didn't love you, because he knew you'd tried to take what wasn't yours. He made sure I had the legal protection to stop you. I walked toward the door, then paused. The property taxes are $18,000 a year. Insurance is $11,000. Maintenance and utilities run about $9,000. You were right about the costs. Warren looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. But I can afford it, I finished. I've always been able to afford it. I just never felt the need to prove that to you. 3 weeks later, the criminal charges were reduced to misdemeanor fraud, after Warren paid full restitution to the auction house and the bidders who'd retained attorneys. His penalty package was extensive. $52,000 in combined damages, fees, and restitution, 200 hours of community service to be completed within 1 year, 3 years of supervised probation with quarterly financial reporting, and mandatory attendance at a court-ordered ethics seminar for real estate professionals. No jail time, but a permanent criminal record that would follow him forever. The professional consequences were worse than the legal ones. Warren's real estate license was suspended for 2 years. His consulting business lost 3 major clients within a week. Word traveled fast in professional circles, and nobody wanted to be associated with someone who'd committed real estate fraud. His membership at the Lake District Business Association was revoked. His country club asked him to resign. His wife, my Aunt Patricia, filed for divorce within a week of the auction incident. She'd discovered Warren had taken out a second mortgage on their house without telling her, trying to fund an investment scheme with a former colleague. He'd been counting on the auction proceeds to pay it off before she found out. The fraud charges had triggered a financial review that exposed everything. Patricia called me the day she moved out. I should have seen it years ago. The way he talked about you, about your father, about anyone who didn't measure success by money. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. My brother Marcus called to apologize as well. I should have trusted you knew what you were doing. Warren made it sound so reasonable, like he was helping, like you were in denial about your finances. I should have asked you directly. It's okay, I told him. Warren's good at making people doubt themselves. That's how manipulators work. They sound so confident that you start questioning your own reality. You're still coming up to the cabin this summer, right? 4th of July week? Sarah wants to bring the kids, let them see the lake. Wouldn't miss it. Tell Sarah the dock's getting new decking, should be perfect by July. My cousin Jennifer, Warren's daughter, sent a long email apologizing for her father and asking if we could still maintain a relationship. I know what he did was inexcusable. I've been trying to get him to address his issues for years. The control, the obsession with money, the way he treats people. I'm so sorry you had to be the one who finally stopped him. I wrote back, you're not responsible for your father's choices. Come visit the cabin anytime. I stood on the dock, watching sunset paint the lake in gold and amber. The boathouse needed new shingles. I'd already gotten 3 quotes, settling on a local contractor who'd worked with my grandfather back in the 80s. The main cabin's deck required sanding and refinishing. That would be my project for late August, after the summer guests left. The dock pilings needed inspection, scheduled for next week with the County Marine Services Department. All tasks I could afford, both financially and emotionally. The cabin had good bones. Dad had maintained it well, and before him, Grandpa had built it to last. The foundation was solid fieldstone. The framing was old-growth timber that would outlive modern materials by decades. With proper care, this place would stand another 100 years. My phone rang. "Margaret, the DA closed the case officially," she said. "Warren's completed his restitution payments. All conditions of his plea agreement are being met. It's over. Thanks for everything, Margaret. I know Dad would have appreciated how you handled this. Your father would be proud of how you handled this." She paused. "I know he seemed paranoid, writing that will the way he did, explicitly excluding Warren, naming you as sole beneficiary with those specific protection clauses. But he understood his brother. He'd watched Warren manipulate their mother's estate after she died, convince their sister to make bad financial decisions. Sometimes love means protecting people from each other." After we hung up, I pulled out Dad's letter, the one he'd written to me, not Warren. The paper was soft now, the ink fading slightly at the creases. "Alex, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Warren has probably already tried something. He can't help himself. He sees the cabin and thinks about money, not memories. He thinks your quiet life means you're failing, not that you're choosing differently. I built this place with my father, your grandfather. You and I rebuilt it after the fire in '98. Remember that summer? You were 14, and we worked side by side, replacing the roof, installing new windows. Warren helped that one summer with the boathouse, but he never understood what this place means. It's not an asset to him. It's not even really a home. It's just another number on a balance sheet. To you though, I've watched you here. The way you maintain the dock every spring, the way you protect the loon nests, the way you sit on the porch reading like your grandmother used to. You understand this place. You earned this place, not through money, but through care. Don't let Warren bully you. Don't let anyone make you doubt that you deserve this, that you earned this. You're the only one who ever saw this place the way I did, as home, not investment. The will is ironclad. Margaret made sure of it. I gave her very specific instructions about what Warren might try. He'll threaten and manipulate, and maybe even cry. Let him. Then stand your ground. I love you, son. Take care of our lake. Take care of the memories. Take care of yourself. Dad." I folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into my wallet, where I'd kept it since the funeral. A loon called across the lake, its haunting cry echoing off the opposite shore. Within seconds, another answered from the northern inlet, the mating pair that nested near the old swimming cove every year. They'd been here since I was a child. Dad used to take me out in the canoe at dawn to watch them fish. Soon the summer people would arrive, families with children, retirees seeking peace, young couples starting their journeys. I'd already booked 3 rentals for July and August, carefully screening tenants to ensure they'd respect the property. The income would cover the taxes and maintenance, with enough left over to start a replacement fund for the roof. But tonight, the lake was mine. Tomorrow I'd start the repairs. Next week I'd meet with the marine inspector. Next month I'd sand the deck. All of it on my timeline, my terms, my care. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then recognized the area code. Warren's region. "Hello, Alex. It's Warren." His voice was hoarse, older somehow, like the past 3 weeks had aged him years. I read the letter, the one David wrote me, the one Patricia found when she was packing my things. I waited, watching the last light fade from the western sky. He said I'd lost sight of what mattered, that I'd spent so long chasing financial success, that I'd forgotten how to value anything that couldn't be sold. Warren's breath caught. He said I was teaching my kids to measure people by their bank accounts, and that terrified him. "He didn't want you to become like me." The loon called again, lonely and clear. "He wasn't wrong," Warren continued. "He wasn't wrong about any of it. I've lost Patricia. I've lost my business reputation. I've lost the respect of my own children. Jennifer won't speak to me. My son moved to Portland last week, Didn't even tell me until he was already gone, and I keep thinking, I did this. I destroyed everything that actually mattered, chasing things that don't. Yes, I said quietly, you did. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I wanted you to know I read it, all of it. He wrote 6 pages, Alex, 6 pages explaining why he structured the will the way he did, why he couldn't trust me with family assets, why he was protecting you from me. His voice broke. He called me his brother, and his greatest disappointment in the same sentence. I closed my eyes, remembering Dad's face the last time we'd talked about Warren, the sadness there, the resignation. Could I? Warren cleared his throat. Could I sometime? Not now, but maybe next year or the year after. Could I visit? Not to ask for anything, just to see it again. To remember the summer we built the boathouse. To remember when I still knew how to value something besides money. I looked at the boathouse, silhouetted against the darkening sky. Remembered the summer Warren and Dad worked side by side, laughing over crooked framing, arguing about proper joint techniques, proud of what they'd built together. Warren had been different then, or maybe he'd always been this way, and I'd been too young to see it. Ask me next summer, I said. We'll see where things stand. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. I hung up before he could say anything else that might soften my anger, might make me forget what he'd tried to do. The loon called again, and this time 3 others answered, the original pair, and their half-grown juveniles from last year's nest, a family, staying together through another season. I'd check on them tomorrow, make sure boaters knew to give them space, put up the protection buoys like Dad always did, protect what needed protecting, just like Dad had protected this place from Warren, just like I'd protect it now, and teach my own children someday to protect it after me. The gavel had been raised at $800,000, ready to fall and shatter everything Dad had built, everything Grandpa had built before him. But the gavel never fell, and the cabin remained exactly where it belonged, in the hands of someone who understood that some things can't be measured in dollars, can't be reduced to assets and liabilities, can't be sold because they've already been paid for, in time, in love, in generations of memory. In quiet mornings watching loons fish and quiet evenings, watching sunsets paint the water gold. I walked back toward the cabin as the last light faded from the sky, already planning tomorrow's repairs, already protecting the next 100 years. Warren had been right about one thing. This property needed an owner who could afford it. He just hadn't understood what that meant. It didn't mean someone with the most money. It meant someone who could afford to care, to maintain, to protect. Someone who could afford patience and time and love. I could afford all of that. I always could.